Okay, well, welcome everybody. My name's Mark O'Donnell. I'm the designated federal officer for the Advisory Committee on Tax Exempt and Government Entities, also known as ACT. I'm officially calling this public meeting of ACT to order. Before we begin, just a few items about how the meeting will proceed. First, we'll have a quick go-around, those in the room, name and position. Then I'll turn it over to TEGE Commissioner Sunita Lowe for remarks, and then to IRS Commissioner Koskinen to speak. Then Allison Cohen to open up the report overviews. We're fortunate to have Commissioner Koskinen for the first 45 minutes of the meeting. Because of that limited time, the ACT project leaders will each provide a brief overview of their project, and Commissioner Koskinen will have an opportunity to ask questions or make comments. After that, we'll have an opportunity for TEGE leadership to provide questions and comments, and then we'll open it up to the public for questions and comments. Before we begin, I ask everyone to mute their phones or silence them for the meeting. So let's start with the roll call. I'm Mark O'Donnell again from TEGE Communications and Liaison.
I'm Matt Whitehorn on the subcommittee.
I'm Amy Jones-Madsen. I'm on the EO.
I'm Lawrence Donovan, so on the EO's subcommittee.
And I'm Tammy Ripper. I'm the Director of Exempt Organizations, IRS.
I am Nancy Young. I'm the Assistant Deputy Commissioner of Government and Administrative Services, TEGE.
Terry Lemons, I'm Chief of Communications and Liaison for the service.
Crystal Delgado.
Virginia Gross, I'm also on the EO subcommittee.
Tino Knapp on the ITG subcommittee.
Stu Serkin on the EP subcommittee.
Sunita Lowe, DEG Commissioner.
I'm John Koskinen. I'm the IRS Commissioner.
Allison Cohen, EP Subcommittee and ACT Chair for this year.
I'm Floyd Newton. I'm on the TEB subcommittee.
I'm Bandy DeVore, and I'm on the FSLG subcommittee.
My name is Deborah F. Titus. I am an organizer for the Government with Senator Metro Washington, D.C. area, 501c3 organization.
I'm Lisa Beard. I'm the Director of Employee Plans Examinations.
I'm Robert Choi, Director of Employee Plans in TEGE.
I'm Marcel Gomez of ITG Subcommittee.
If we go around the outside as well.
Jeffrey Warner, Boston. Ryan Carpile, Commissioner's Office, IRS.
Sarah Allen, Commissioner's Office, IRS.
Andy Kiso, Deputy Chief of Staff and Commissioner.
Mike Shaw, CPA from New York City.
Raina Samad, Summer Associate at Venable, the Summer Law Firm.
Matthew Madero, Tax Notes.
Evan Fowler, Bob Buyer.
Michelle Eldridge, IRS Communications Director.
Melvin Hardy, National Public Liaison.
Fort Fisher, Tax Revolution Institute.
Cynthia Van Bogart, IRS Office of Chief Counsel.
Dean Patterson, IRS Communications.
Colleen Murphy, Bloomberg BMA.
Shalisa Mathis, Walters Kluwer, CCH.
Laura Kilinsky, Council on Foundations.
Mark Scott,
Walter Savage, ASME. Jan Jacobson, American Benefits Council.
Maria Hook, TEG Government Entity Shared Services.
All right, so thank you very much everyone for coming. Before we get started, I want to thank the ACT members for a great report this year. As I've said many times, and it's never said enough, you all have really important, busy jobs in your day lives, and any time you can give us is fantastic. But you don't give us just any time. You really give us a lot of good time, and it's really appreciated. You've all taken this membership very seriously and provided us with very good reports and recommendation, and it's greatly appreciated. And it's not been easy because we've been doing this all virtually. So thank you for your patience for that. And so I look forward to listening to your reports. I know we all do. And because those are most important, I'm going to pass it on to the Commissioner.
Thanks, Anita, and thanks to all of you. I'm delighted to be here for as much of my day as I can because I always enjoy the back and forth with the various advisory committees where we get the benefit of their insights, suggestions, and advice. And so I'd like to thank all the members of the committee that are here, as well as those that are on the phone, or some on the phone. Hi there on the phone. For the time and service you put in, many of you, not only just this year, but for earlier years in your service. And I'd also like to welcome the members of the public and the press who are here joining us for this public meeting. This is the second public meeting of ACT conducted virtually, even though we have a lot of warm bodies in the room. But I appreciate the committee through the year working through the challenges of that. We're all increasingly relying on virtual meetings. And in some cases it works. I do town halls now virtually where I used to do them in person. Resource constraints have confined our ability to do as much in person as we would like. But as I noted, we have a number of standing advisory committees across the agency, and they really are a critical part of our operations and our ability to learn from what I call people in outside of the IRS, what's going on in the real world, and how our actions are affecting people, how we're interacting with organizations across the sweep of all of our operations. So I do my best to go to every one of those, at least the annual meetings, again, just to cause me to actually quickly scan through the report and get a feel for where your recommendations are and what you're suggesting. But all of you bring, as all our other advisory committees do, your own particular experiences and perspectives that you bring to bear on, in case of ACT, the various subcommittees, which again are critical to us. That we can be a big organization. We have a lot of work to do. Like anybody, you can become very introspective if you're not careful, focusing on just getting the work done. And so having regular ways of interaction with the public and with people with particular interests in various levels and areas of activity is very helpful. And I was struck, I'm delighted to get the shorthand version of the committee's individual subcommittee recommendations. But I was struck that there's a common theme of providing even more opportunities for exchange, for information, for advice from us to you and from you to us in a number of the recommendations. And again, those are important to us. I think we do a lot, Terry will tell you, we do a lot of work trying to get information out because it is critical to us for taxpayers to have as much information as they can. But sometimes it's possible that we think we're getting a lot of information out, and from the standpoint of the recipients, it either isn't as much as you'd like or it doesn't come in the format that's most usable for you. So it's just an example of, it seems to me, the advantage and the benefit to us of the feedback we get on a regular basis from all of you. So over the years, we've taken advantage of and responded to and adopted a range of recommendations from ACT. We expanded the guidance we provide to Indian tribal governments, for example, to include issues of importance to individual tribal citizen taxpayers. And we've, again, valued the relationship and respect the sovereignty of Indian tribes and our important responsibilities there. But again, we get very good feedback and suggestions from them as we go. And in the employee plans area, when we issued RevProc 2015-36 to provide greater flexibility to certain sponsors of individually designed plans, it really was a response to a suggestion that you all have made. So, we appreciate all of that back and forth. When we rewrote the tax-exempt bond publications to assist bond issuers unfamiliar with the rules, you reviewed those publications to make sure that they were properly crafted for the audience. I understand there are more suggestions issued about, again, how we can more efficiently and effectively interact with and give advice to tax-exempt bond areas. We're delighted to work with you to try to do. And in the government and entity sector, ways to increase compliance. I was struck in the report of reminded me of a large number of particularly small to medium-sized cities and counties and government entities out there, and the issue of staffing. And what can we do to provide more help and assistance to those taxpayers as we go forward. In fact, I got asked on one I guess it was a television talk show. One of the things I was surprised at, since I've been commissioner, and I said one of the things that has surprised me is the amount of time and effort we actually spend trying to help taxpayers figure out what they owe and how to become compliant. It's not necessarily our image. When somebody thinks about the IRS, where they think, well, they're going to come knock on the door to make sure I pay my taxes. But we really do want taxpayers to, as easily as possible, figure out what do they owe, and then as easily as we can make it, figure out how to make the payment. As I've said many times, if you're trying to be compliant, we're anxious to work for you. You don't have to hire somebody off late night TV to come contact us. And increasingly, as we've looked at our strategic planning and our future state going forward, we've begun to say, we won't talk about the future state here, but we're basically trying to figure out what's the world look like from the taxpayer side. What can we do to make things run more efficiently, effectively for taxpayers? And we've often thought of the taxpayers as compliant and non-compliant, and increasingly, I think we're going to try to get people to understand we view taxpayers as the people who are compliant, the vast majority. People who are trying to be compliant and have either questions or concerns or difficulties with payments, who are taxpayers we want to work with, as I said. And then there's a third category, people who actually taxes are trying not to be compliant, and as I said, we're happy to chase those people to the end of the earth. Not only to collect the taxes, but for the fact that taxpayers all need to be comfortable the system is fair and that everybody is paying their fair share. But I would stress that that middle group, people trying to become compliant who have questions, concerns, or difficulties, are a group that we really do spend a lot of time reaching out to, and I think it's important for people to understand. Not to trap people or catch them in a football. Our goal really is to try to help people be compliant. And so our ongoing dialogue with you, from your perspectives and the experience you've got, is an important part of it. What can we do to make the entire tax process as transparent and as manageable for taxpayers across the sweep of the range of taxpayers we have, as easy, efficient, and as effective as possible. So with that, again, thanks for your participation, and the service you're giving to us is really service to taxpayers in that context, and so we appreciate that as well. So I look forward to my continued remaining part of the participation, and particularly getting the summary of the recommendations you've got. As you can tell, I hope, I've actually gone through this report a little and tried to get a feel for the sweep of the recommendations.
Thank you, Commissioner. Allison?
I will keep my remarks brief since I know I am not the meat and potatoes of this meeting here. This is actually my fourth and final public meeting. I've served on the Act for 3 years, and I have seen committee members coming in and coming, going, and I have to say that I am exceptionally proud and privileged to have served with all of them, past and present. This is a group of incredibly dedicated individuals who, they have full-time jobs, they have families, and we all do it, and we all come here because we love what we do, and we have a passion for what we do. And we want to help not just ourselves and our individual practices, but the communities at large that we represent and that we serve. And it has also been wonderful, the receptiveness, the camaraderie, the open dialogue, the respectful discourse that we have with the members of the IRS. And I mean, I have worked especially with Rob and Lisa and Karen, and you have an incredible team in place, in case you weren't aware. But
I may take you and just wind you up and have you go out presentations to the public on our behalf.
Well, I just have to say, I mean, it has been challenging. And in the 3 years I've been here, the one constant is change. And some changes are positive and some changes are painful, and it's just part of the nature of the process. And all I could say is that I hope that the nature of this group and the cooperation of this group, even though we have so many different opinions, if any of that can seep outside of these walls to some areas in this immediate vicinity, that would be terrific, because I think these reports really typify what can happen when people come together with the right spirit and with the right heart. And I think the results, as you've mentioned, have been some incredibly productive and valuable aspects outside. So thank you all for allowing me to be here for the past 3 years, and it has been my pleasure to serve.
So now we can begin our reports. You have the option of speaking from the table or going up to the podium. And let's start with employee plans.
Hi, everybody. I'm Matt Whitehorn. Allison is a really hard act to follow, but besides...
You notice I preceded her. I knew you were exactly right.
But besides doing our presentation for our EP subcommittee today, I'm also the incoming ACT chair, so Allison is doubly hard to follow. I wanted to first introduce the other members of our subcommittee, and I have to say it has been a great pleasure to work with these people. Not only they're great practitioners, but I consider all of them to be good friends after our task of writing the report and working with each other. So there's me, Matt Whitehorn. I'm with the Dilworth Paxson Law Firm in Philadelphia. Susan Bernstein is with Schulte, Roth, and Zabel Law Firm. Judy Boyette is with Hanson Bridget Law Firm. Allison Cohen is with the Forensic Benefits Law Center. Chris Schenkel is with Argent Trust Company. And Stuart Sirkin is with the Siegel Company. Just about a 30-second overview before I get into the details. In 2015, the IRS implemented some changes to a long-standing program through which employers would submit applications for determination letters for individually designed plans. And there are numerous outside factors at the IRS. There are staffing issues, there are budgeting issues that the IRS believed necessitated these changes. Now, under this program, what happened was you would submit an initial determination letter application. When there were law changes or other optional type changes, you were able to go in on a cycle program based on what your employer EIN number is and get a periodic determination letter reaffirming the plan's tax qualified status. And then when the plan terminated, you could go into the service and get a determination letter upon termination. Due to the issues I just mentioned, what happened is the IRS thought it necessary to make some changes for that middle portion that I just discussed, going in for these periodic determination letters. In response to that, we surveyed people in the retirement plans. Due to the issues I just mentioned, what happened is the IRS thought it necessary to make some changes for that middle portion that I just discussed, going in for these periodic determination letters. In response to that, we surveyed people in the retirement plans community, and we also read through all the comments people had submitted in response to the IRS guidance that had been promulgated. And we came up with several recommendations. The first of which was, do not eliminate periodic determination letters. Adopt the IRS's current position as a transition rule while discussing modifications with the EP community. And then implementing the changes in the least disruptive manner possible. And while we were doing this, we worked cooperatively with Rob and the EP staff who are great in working with us, and we also worked with some other portions of the IRS to try to determine a way that these changes could be implemented in the least disruptive manner. We determined that the IRS needed to provide certainty as to the future availability of determination letters to as much of the EP community as is feasible. And that would be in what situations is it really, really important for a plan sponsor to have a determination letter. Plan size, merger and acquisition situation, and we went through a number of variables which we set forth in the report. As an alternative, we also tried to determine ways to make the pre-approved program more flexible. In the retirement plan world, besides having individually designed plans, there's also pre-approved plans that are prototype type documents, and their use is limited to certain types of plans. So we had some ideas about how to expand the use of the pre-approved program. And one of the issues that came up was an increase in user fees for the sponsors who submit these programs for IRS approval. Is there a way that maybe we can get those fees reduced? We also discussed that need with these changes to alter the employee plans compliance resolution system, which is the system that plan sponsors can use to correct operational and demographic and document failures for retirement plans. So they could be used without a plan sponsor having a current determination letter and for certain issues identified in audit. Under EPCRS, certain corrections require providing a determination letter to the reviewing IRS agent. Ways to make the situation a little bit more easy was to expand plan provisions that can be incorporated by reference to the Internal Revenue Code or Treasury regulations, and to allow for leniency for immaterial flaws in plan document language. So if there's a typo or some language that doesn't exactly follow a reg, the reviewing agent would be a little bit more lenient in reviewing a plan upon examination. We also thought it important for the IRS to confirm Code 7805B protection, which is protection against regulation making something in a plan impermissible. And we thought that should continue for plan document language that is unchanged from that approved under a prior determination letter. And we also talked about whether it made sense to have independent review of plans and approval as good faith and compliance, meaning that an independent third party would be able to review a plan document and say it was compliant and how that could possibly work. Also, we recommended providing a safe harbor to convert an individually designed plan into a pre-approved plan or a process to review such conversions to get them done in a timely manner. We also suggested that to make the whole process easier, the IRS might want to publish some model amendments. People could just adopt these for required law changes. Also, to make sure that the service provided adequate time for plan sponsors to adopt all amendments and to coordinate amendment dates. In addition, we thought it made sense for Treasury to ask Congress to increase and dedicate the retirement plan user fees and direct them specifically to the determination letter program to provide additional funding, because those fees right now do not go specifically to the determination letter program, and some of the fees are fairly substantial. I think that is the conclusion of our recommendation.
Thank you. Now let's hear from the subcommittee for exempt organizations. Amy?
Good afternoon. My name is Amy Coates Madsen, and I serve as one of the co-chairs of the EO subcommittee. And I work for the Standards for Excellence Institute of the Maryland Association of Nonprofit Organizations. Andrew Watt also serves as co-chair of the EO subcommittee. The other members of the EO subcommittee include our colleagues who are finishing their third and final year, Virginia Gross of Posinelli PC Law Firm, and Dave Moja from Cape Krause. And my colleagues who are finishing their first year on the Act, Cindy Lott of the Nonprofit Management Program's School of Professional Studies at Columbia University and the Center for Nonprofits and Philanthropy at the Urban Institute, and Natasha Kavanaugh of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So the title of our report this year is Stewards of the Public Trust, Long-Range Planning for the Future of the IRS and the Exempt Community. All of the over 1 million U.S. exempt organizations are regulated by the IRS, and every time that the IRS recognizes tax-exempt status for one of these new organizations, the public is delegating its trust to you. We recognize that this is a complex sector. We recognize the growth in the sector is anticipated to continue, and we also recognize the shifts in the priorities at the IRS. So with all of this in mind, we offer recommendations this year in an attempt to bring a set of sort of big picture, future planning suggestions for EO for the next 20 to 30 years. In order to craft this year's report, we held a series of in-depth interviews with individuals throughout the United States and internationally, both from regulators and regulated organizations. And the individuals we interviewed were terrific. They included some of the strongest leaders in nonprofit and exempt organizations, associations, professionals that serve exempt organizations, and quite a few IRS staff members as well. Some themes quickly emerged from our work, including the need for greater coordinated action and transparency, stronger communications between the IRS and the exempt organizations, and greater IRS focus on tools and helpful resources to help in terms of making the organizations more reliant, self-reliant, and being able to answer their questions and be compliant with the tax law. So we have 6 recommendations, and I'll start with the first one, which focus on ensuring that the...
Some of them have subsets.
I know. There's a lot of different subjects we covered this year. It's true. And then subsets to the subsets. But we're not covering all the subsets today, but it's page turning. So this first recommendation is about ensuring that EO staff members have the capacity and expertise they need to carry out their important responsibilities of the EO division. And with an increasing number of exempt organizations and a pretty significant decrease in the number of staff in this area, we recommend embracing opportunities to provide more expertise and capacity for the staff members. The second recommendation focuses on providing leadership and guidance on major issues that impact exempt organizations now and in the coming years, on things like unrelated business income, political activities and 501c4s, religious organizations and their tax-exempt status, donor-advised funds, and international issues generally. And we've even developed a kind of a mock-up of a fact sheet that we'd love the IRS to implement because we think it would be really helpful to organizations that work in this area. And then our next recommendation focuses on arming exempt organizations so that they themselves will have the tools so that they can be compliant with the tax law. For instance, we'd like to see the EO publish additional details on audit data so that the organizations have a better understanding of the kinds of issues that are audited and the results of the audit. We'd also like to see more relevant user-focused guidance similar to in the past CPE text that folks can review online. And we're grateful to see that the issue snapshots are moving in that direction. And we also recommend an easier to navigate website and with an encouragement to add back into the homepage of the IRS.gov link to exempt organizations that have been present in the past. It's really interesting.
So throughout the report, we've been focused on how can we provide critical or help the IRS to focus critically, but in a lean fashion. And I think cybersecurity and recommendation 4 is a key area. All of us are increasingly focused on this. We are increasingly aware of the risks involved. All of us are operating with very limited budgets. So we want to encourage the IRS to be very strategic in the sensitive information that it does collect and not over-collect sensitive information. There is no need for that. And also, when applying the budget, to make very targeted budgets and very targeted investments in both IT and in personnel. Those enhancements are critical. There's a tendency to spread things too thickly, which I think we think it would be helpful to avoid. The fifth recommendation centers on a critical function of the IRS, which is the collection of data. You sit on a wealth of data. We would really encourage the IRS to explore ways in which it can really efficiently and effectively share that data with state charity officials and regulators, and to disseminate what is possible, wherever possible, that information that's electronically filed and available. There is a huge amount there that our sector needs and needs to be aware of, and we would really love to work with you in order to help you find ways to do that, which leads me into recommendation 6. We believe that this is a very open environment. There should be very strong two-way communication between the IRS Exempt Organizations Division and the non-profit sector. We are all trying to achieve a similar outcome, which is the health and well-being of this country. So we would like to focus on you soliciting input from a greater number of your partners, because we are your partners out there. Coming to us sooner and at an earlier stage, so that things don't become large. We made some specific recommendations. We made some very specific recommendations within the body of the report, and I'll touch on a couple. We believe that the determination letter that goes out to new organisations newly exempt is a critical opportunity to communicate with them. It provides a really valuable platform and it's an opportunity to provide resources that can guide the tax code and how to follow the law. We offer a sample determination letter in the body of the report to show you how it's developed. We also encourage you, like all of us, to embrace technology. It's out there. We recognise that you have very specific challenges with technology. It's one of the privileges of serving on the Act. The veil is drawn back slightly. It's been interesting in education. But nevertheless, there have to be ways that we can cheaply yet effectively disseminate some of that information in a more targeted fashion. And just continue to increase the availability of strong expert resources along the lines that Amy was referring to. There is so much that a simple fact sheet can achieve. And we know that working in non-profit communities, we know that those sorts of resources, particularly interactive resources, are really valuable. And in conclusion, and this is a slightly elegiac note for us on this, we wanted to say that our success depends on your success. It depends on the EO division. The EO division is actively engaged with us and with the public at large, that is adequately resourced. And I'm not sounding a level thing, but the resource issue is huge, and Alison touched on that a little to start with, that does share data, and that views us as partners working with you and not in opposition to you, because our mutual interests are best served by collaboration and cooperation in a very proactive way. We have really felt privileged in joining, in working. Could you flick on the slide? Thank you. We've been privileged to work with the EOT, and we are proposing to disseminate this report very widely. And to help us do this, we've just worked on a little sort of infographic, really, just to get there. Your team, as Alison said, is quite phenomenal. We have enormous respect, admiration, and affection for the people we work with. And that embraces the full spectrum, but we particularly like to call out Tammy Ripper, Margaret Mondina, and Megan Biss, because without all of you, we could not have achieved this report. So thank you for the opportunity of working with you, and thank you for the opportunity of serving in this way.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy and Andrew. Now let's hear from the Fed State Local Government Subcommittee.
Hello. The Federal, State, and Local Government Subcommittee consisted of 3 members. David Augustine serves as the tax collector for the City of San Francisco. He's been with the city for 11 years, and he's rolling off the act this year. Also is Dean Condor, who is the Deputy State Social Security Administrator for the state of Colorado, and he's been with the state for 25 years. And then I'm Vandy DeVore, and I am the Deputy State Social Security Administrator for the state of Missouri, and I have been with the state of Missouri for 27 years. Our subcommittee, the FSLG subcommittee, took on 2 different projects this year. The technical revision, the first project was the technical revision of internal FSLG Section 218 trainings, and then also the project to better achieve outreach and education to small local governments. And to give a little brief background, according to the U.S. Census, there's over 90,000, I think that's underestimated by the way, local government entities in the U.S. with almost 12 million full-time equivalent employees with payrolls in excess of $50 billion, and currently only 47 IRS FSLG field agents dedicated to state and local government issues. So in the training project, technical experts among the FSLG subcommittee reviewed and made comments on the FSLG phase training. And this is an internal program that provides specialized knowledge to FSLG employees on the complex compliance issues for state and local government employers. And the members of the subcommittee worked with senior FSLG agents to devise a new strategy and syllabus for the FSLG internal training on Section 218 matters for both new employees and continuing education for your existing agents. And again, I'll mirror what all the other subcommittees said. It is an absolute pleasure to work with your staff and agents. Just a joy to work with them. They're very professional and always helpful. In the Outreach Focus Project, the ACT FSLG subcommittee formulated a survey to seek input from small local governments. And when I mean small local governments, I'm talking small, where there are just 1 or 2 employees at some of these little bitty water districts, sewer districts, types of entities. The survey was distributed through various professional organizations and other outlets to reach a variety of these small local government entities across the nation. And it was very simple, just 7 questions plus an opportunity for free-form narrative feedback. We included the survey in our report as Appendix B, and it was really the backbone for the subcommittee's recommendation. So our recommendations for the training project include recommendation number 1 is implement changes to the FSLG phase training as we identified in Appendix A. Basically, in a nutshell, the suggestion is to incorporate Section 218 training components into the new employee training and the CPE events. And recommendation number 2, provide more focus on state-specific laws in the FSLG phase training because Section 218 coverage can be so unique, and it's important for the agents to understand these concepts for their assigned states. And then that brings us to our recommendations for the outreach project. Realizing that only 47 agents can in no way audit over 90,000 entities, other forms of outreach is imperative. These recommendations can help improve compliance by providing the information. So recommendation number 3 was to partner with state auditors' offices to ensure proper compliance of local governments with employment tax laws by utilizing basic reviews of 218 agreements coupled with W-2s and 1099 reporting. Many state auditors' offices are not even aware of Section 218. The 218 coverage, as they comply only with Yellow Book and GASB standards for auditing. However, with small government entities, it seems reasonable to consider that payrolls are significant percentages of their overall budgets. So erroneous Social Security employer match payments could indeed be a material amount. And then recommendation number 4 is the FSLG should partner with national professional organizations. We identified some of them in Appendix C in the report, and others to further the educational outreach to small local governments. Of course, Appendix C was just a list that we used in asking the assistance in distributing the survey. It's not exclusive, but it was a start. It helped us. And then recommendation number 5, the email flash news was preferred by the small local governments. FSLG has an existing email subscription service that could be utilized for this purpose, but you need to find better ways to advertise the availability of that to the small government entities. And then recommendation number 6, don't hesitate to repeat topics of importance when conducting outreach. Turnover is high in some of these little government entities, so as soon as you get somebody trained on an issue, you have somebody new coming in. They need constantly trained on the same topics. The next slide is recommendation number 7. Smaller government entities need direct training. From our survey, 86.5% perform payroll and payable duties internally as opposed to having a CPA firm. The staff from these entities should be the target of outreach efforts by FSLG. And then recommendation number 8 was very few states have a single source of registering or recording all of their political subdivisions. There is no single listing within each state. Thereby, the accuracy of this 90,000 census count or any known reporting tool just isn't reliable. FSLG should work with other TEGE divisions and develop a comprehensive plan on identifying all government entities in each state. And we want to thank you, the Commissioner, and all of the IRS support that we've gotten in allowing us to report our recommendations to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Vandy. Now let's hear from the Subcommittee on Indian Tribal Governments.
Thank you, Mark. The Indian Tribal Subcommittee consists of 3 members. One is Tino Bat, an enrolled member and employee of the Shoshone Tribes of Fort Hall, Idaho. Stephanie Dalrymple, a CPA in Fairbanks, Alaska. And Marcelino Gomez, myself, who is an attorney in Phoenix, Arizona. This year, the ITG subcommittee chose for its project the preparation of a survey of tribal governments and their entities covering the effectiveness of IRS communication methodologies. And the survey also included questions on substantive areas of taxation and their impact on tribal governments. As a backdrop for these recommendations, the committee recommends the IRS should continue its unique relationship with tribal governments. The federal government has a unique legal relationship with Indian tribal governments as set forth in the Constitution of the United States, treaties, statutes, and court decisions, and federal Indian law. Presidential executive orders have directed federal government agencies to respect tribal self-government and sovereignty, honor tribal treaty and other rights, and strive to meet the responsibilities that arise from the unique legal relationship between the federal government and Indian tribal governments. Based on the survey results and responses, the communication and training recommendations that the ITG subcommittee would make is that the ITG should continue to participate in annual and semi-annual meetings of tribal organizations such as the National Congress of American Indians and the Native American Finance Officers Association to update tribal organizations on important tax topics. The ITG should continue to present relevant and timely webinars which can be virtually attended by tribal finance personnel as well as tribal leaders. The ITG should provide training to ITG field agents on substantive tax topics such as the General Welfare Exclusion Act and tribal government responsibilities under that act. The ITG should provide timely regional face-to-face training to tribal governments and entities on substantive tax topics. Next slide. As a backdrop to this slide, Congress has recognized that federal health services to maintain and improve health of Indians are consistent with and required by the federal government's historical and unique legal relationship with Native Americans. And the ITG subcommittee recommends a tribal exemption from the employer shared responsibility rule implementing the Affordable Care Act employer mandate because it does not specifically apply to tribal governments. The compliance with the employer mandate forces tribes to either absorb the cost of employee health insurance or pay non-compliance penalties. Requiring tribal governments to involuntarily subsidize the Indian Health Service by providing the Indian Health Service with tribally funded resources does not respect the government-to-government relationship between tribes and the United States, nor the obligations of the trust responsibility. The individual Native American ends up paying for health coverage in the form of actual plan costs or lost tax credit eligibility, undercutting the individual exemption that's in the Act. The next slide. The Cadillac tax government plan provision under subsection 4980 does not clearly and expressly mention anything about plans administered by an Indian tribe or tribal organization, despite specifically addressing state governments and federal governments. For that reason, we don't feel the Cadillac tax should apply. that tribal employers who administer their own plans should not be subject to the Cadillac tax. Cadillac tax seriously affects a tribe's ability to structure employee benefit packages in accordance with tribal specific needs. The last slide, the General Welfare Act definitively establishes the rules applicable to social welfare programs provided by Indian tribes for their citizens. The IRS should clarify issues and communicate information to tribal governments related to the General Welfare Exclusion Act. And in doing this, the IRS should consult with the newly created Tribal Advisory Committee created by the General Welfare Exclusion Act within Treasury and this ITG subcommittee on matters of income tax policy, including general welfare decisions. We'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present these.
Thank you, Marcelina. Now let's hear from the Tax Exempt Bonds Subcommittee.
Thank you, Mark. Again, I'm Floyd Newton. There are two other members of my subcommittee, both of whom are from Texas, interestingly enough. My two Texas compatriots are David Dannenfelser, who's from Austin, Texas, with the Texas State Affordable Housing Group, and Bill Johnson, who is with First Southwest Asset Management in Dallas, Texas. And our report this year is recommendations for continuous improvement and enhancing resources in the tax-exempt bond market. Over the years, this subcommittee has made a number of very specific recommendations on a lot of technical matters. And I think that our relationship with the Act has changed quite a bit over the last year or so into more of an advisory and consulting relationship. And I think that theme sort of comes through a lot of these reports. But we have been focused on trying to assist TEB to better utilize its limited resources, to help it provide better guidance for issuers and market participants, and to lessen the negative impact of routine examinations on issuers and market participants. And we have some specific recommendations. First of all, we recommend more extensive and regular communication between the bond subcommittee and TEB. We've established a pattern of regular calls with TEB, and we would recommend that that even be increased. They're currently held on a monthly basis. And we also believe that the bond subcommittee needs to work more with TEB to provide more targeted outreach, including recommendations as to targeted audience and the appropriate level and complexity of outreach materials and publications. That is a very difficult topic because there are many different audiences with very different levels of sophistication. And so when you look at outreach, publications, and other things, you've got to target them to hit the right level for the right audience. So that's a fairly complex area. We want to continue to work with TEB to provide revised Form 8038 filings. We think that is a very important tool. It will provide TEB with more detailed and meaningful information regarding the characteristics of particular bond issues. And outside of general compliance examinations, we believe that having better information at TEB will actually limit the exposure of issuers to time-consuming and costly examinations on bond issues which are not likely to exhibit meaningful compliance issues. That's a wasteful use of both IRS resources and issuer resources. We strongly recommend providing electronic filing options for IRS Form 8038. There have been past Act reports, including a report in 2012, which provided a lot of very detailed recommendations about additional information that could be included on a revised Form 8038. We believe the appropriate time to actually go through and come up with specific recommendations as to what should be on the form is at the time when electronic filing is actually is being put together, and do that all as one big project. We believe that TEB should target examination efforts on transactions which are likely to exhibit non-compliance and limit random examinations or examinations which are based solely on broad market segments. While some random examinations are certainly necessary to ensure compliance, We believe that with better information from Form 8038 or other sources, that both IRS examination efforts could be more focused, and that the amount of burden imposed on issuers in responding to examinations could be lessened. We believe that TEB should continue to expand its efforts in industry outreach and education. I think that's another thing that's clearly come through in all of these reports. Bond issuers in general are not taxpayers, except for the occasional instance where they have to pay arbitrage rebate, which unfortunately is not happening enough these days because reinvestment rates are so low. But at the same time, they have their own motivations for tax compliance and their own state by state or locality by locality reasons for wanting to be compliant with the tax laws. And they share a common interest with the IRS in tax compliance. So for that reason, we really believe that outreach and education are very important in this area and can be very effective. We want to complement TEB and IRS by the outreach activities they've had with organizations like the National Association of Bond Lawyers and the ABA subcommittee in the 103 area. We believe that that is a very efficient means of communication and outreach, particularly given the broad reach of those particular groups, and we believe that there are other groups where there can be similar efforts, and we believe that that is an effort that should be increased. And thank you very much for the opportunity to present today. We've enjoyed our work with your staff. Rebecca Harrigal and Daryl Smeltzer are the primary people that we've worked with, and they have been extremely helpful over the years.
Thank you, Floyd. That's our fifth and final report. Thanks to all the presenters. And Commissioner, I know we're running late on your time, but if you have a moment.
Well, I'm, again, delighted to have been able to spend this time with you. Just, again, thank all of you for the significant amount of work you've done. As noted, a number of the recommendations appropriately are designed to how do we, again, back to what I said to begin with, how do we make it as easy as possible and as clear as possible for taxpayers to figure out what they owe and how to interact with us. And, you know, it's always been important for us. It's more critical now as we've been dealing with constrained resources on the one hand and expanded responsibilities on the other. We have to be as efficient and as effective as we can. And a big part of it, I think, in the last set of recommendations are the vast majority of taxpayers want to be compliant. So whether it's an exempt organization or whatever they are, as much information as we can provide, and I've point is well taken about targeting it, with governmental entities. I mean, it's one thing to deal with the city of New York, it's another to deal with a small town in Kentucky where I grew up. But it does seem to me that those recommendations, and what's helpful to us is the detail of the recommendations. Exactly, and it's one thing to say, well, we should communicate more or more effectively, but to give us, you know, ideas and suggestions that either groups that would be good for us to relate to, or the way we can get information packaged in a way that's more effective and usable. As I said earlier, the training, you know, whatever. You don't have a lot of people to be training everybody else, but to the extent we can provide materials that makes training in effect easier for people receiving it, even if it's just responding and reading through the materials, is obviously a big part of it. One of the interesting things to me is in the whole TEGE area, it's an area that a lot, unless you're involved in any one of these areas, you know, people tend to not really focus much on that. I understand if you're an individual taxpayer or a large business, small business, internationally, that's where people tend to think of the IRS and taxpayer service and tax enforcement. But as you can tell, just listening to the sweep of the organizations and recommendations here, I mean, this is a fascinating and important area that affects large numbers of people directly, but also those organizations and people we affect a lot of people directly and indirectly. So it's worth our time. Our goal really is to be and figure out ways to be as efficient as we can with the resources we have, and that's why I think your recommendations and suggestions are very helpful. So I leave you in good hands. I appreciate the positive and good comments about the organization. I have said publicly, trying to get the public to understand it, that I've, as you know, spent 45 years, and half in the private sector, half in the government sector. And this is as dedicated, experienced, and as good a group of employees that I've ever had the pleasure of working with. So it doesn't surprise me that it's always pleasant to hear your reports of positive and helpful working relationships with us. And we hope to continue that. I think Sunita and her leadership team are committed to that because, again, I take it as a partnership. And increasingly, if you assume most taxpayers are trying to be compliant, then they are your partners. I mean, we're just trying to figure out how to make it work most effectively. So thanks very much for your time. For those of you rotating off after your 3-year terms, again, thank you for not just this year, but for all the years that you've joined us in this ongoing effort. So good luck to everybody, and thanks again.
Thanks, Commissioner. Now we have an opportunity to hear from each of the directors.
Are sincerely appreciated by the IRS, by TEGE, and by employee plans. As you are all well aware, this year's ACT report is extremely timely since we anticipate that the revenue procedure announcing the changes to the individually designed determination letter program should be released this month. We also appreciate your observations and recommendations on our other programs that can be impacted by the changes to the individually designed determination letter program, such as our pre-approved plan program and our employee plans compliance resolution program. As your report points out, the service has been issuing determination letters prior to the ERISA Act of 1974. This program has undergone many changes over the years. Since the program's inception until 2005, the determination letter program, which was usually centered around major pension law changes. Since 2005, we have had a staggered submission cycle system where plans can get a determination letter once every 5 years. The new revenue procedure, evolution of the determination letter program, and I appreciate all of your input on the challenges that you see with the new program. As Matt had summarized earlier, your report makes a number of recommendations, many of which are currently being considered by the service and will be the subject of future guidance. I will work with my colleagues in employee plans, in council, and with Treasury to review these recommendations, determine the feasibility of implementing those recommendations not already under consideration. Our goal is to continue to work with the qualified plan and practitioner community to maintain a determination letter program that meets the needs of plan sponsors. In conclusion, I want to thank all of the ACT members for their hard work on this year's project and for providing us with valuable recommendations for the determination letter program. We truly appreciate the dedication and the hard work by each of you to further the relationship between the IRS and the retirement plan community. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Rob. Now let's go to exempt organizations. Tam?
Of the plethora of recommendations that you all came forth with this year. I certainly thank the EO subcommittee for their conscientious work on this year's report, and thank you for your continuing insight and feedback during our regular meetings. I too want to personally acknowledge and thank Virginia Gross and Dave Milano, who I believe is on the phone, for their dedication and consistent engagement over the last 3 years. I feel like we have a little bit of a special relationship because we both kind of joined the ACT about the same time. When I came on, 3 years ago to my post as the EO director. So I especially appreciate your understanding and insight as well as your patience with me as we kind of learn a little bit about EO together. So thank you for that and for your continued insight. Phone at you, okay? So I want to acknowledge your contribution over the last few years. Thank you. I certainly appreciate the subcommittee's work this year in really collaborating and openly sharing, your perspectives on our operational challenges and changes, as well as just the general challenges of tax administration in exempt organizations. The diverse viewpoints that you each bring to the table and brought to the table this year were particularly valuable in our current and continuing state of continual improvement, so that you can kind of help us gauge how what we're doing is working or not working, as well as give us ideas as to what direction we truly need to head. This year, of course, you tackled a particularly difficult topic, I think, on our future planning for EO tax administration. serve and regulate, and you highlighted the challenges that we face in overseeing this growing segment with the shrinking resources and technology limitations that we face. But fittingly, I think your recommendations did address many of the incremental steps that we'll take on our journey to our future state in TEGE and EO. And I sincerely thank you for your diligent work in gathering the viewpoints and analysis from our external stakeholders, as well as your internal perspectives and contributions to where we need to head in EO to better serve the EO sector, as well as regulate and enforce the compliance within the EO sector. So we certainly look forward in EO to working toward those areas and continue our work in those areas of continual improvement. And of course, we'll be discussing some more specificity around how we're going to enact and respond to some of your recommendations as time goes forward in the next year. So thank you.
Thanks, Tammy. Next, we have the three components of government entities. Nan?
Yeah. Hi. I'll be very brief because I have Paul, Christy, and Rebecca on the line. I do want to thank the GE subcommittees for all your hard work during this year. I really appreciate the surveys you've done because it really gives us good information on what our taxpayers' concerns or issues that they have. And without you doing that for us, we didn't have that information. It was really good to hear some of your new ideas, as well as some of your ideas that are validation that some of the things we're doing in GE, we're going in the right direction, because a lot of your ideas are in line with, where we're going, and again, you help give us that validation. So again, thank you for it, and I'm going to turn it over to Paul, I believe.
Paul?
Good afternoon. I want to thank our FSLG Act members, David Augustine, Dean Condor, and Vandy DeVore for an excellent report this year. And Vandy, thank you for the presentation today. Great job. And I really appreciated the depth of information you provided as it relates to the efforts this year. And when we started the year, I had asked the Act to help us in two different areas. One was to review and make recommendations related to our technical training as it relates to Section 218 or Social Security coverage at the state and local levels. And the second area was to review and assess how to improve our outreach and education to the small entity sector. And as Vandy indicated, we have a challenge in that we have limited resources, but yet there are thousands and thousands of small entities that need our assistance through education and outreach. So this was a challenge for us, and I'd asked the Act to look at that particular project as well. And this was not only to take a look at how to reach or best reach the target audience, but also to assess what their needs were and what the preferred method of delivery or outreach delivery would be. So both of these projects and related reports this year provide FSLG with valuable insight and suggestions that will help us improve our service level to the state and local sectors. This feedback is actually quite timely as we move forward toward the development and delivery of more web-based tools, which is our future. And again, given the limited resources, we have to find new and improved ways of delivering the much-needed education and outreach for our customers. So I have reviewed the recommendations that are contained in the report, and I can say that I'm supportive of all the recommendations contained in the FSLG Act report. And for our team, and as you know, I've already taken steps to implement several of the recommendations. We've actually moved away from semi-annual newsletters to flash news via email that's preferred and is recommended in the report. We have actually begun to expand our listing of stakeholder organizations to help improve the reach of our communications to the state and local sector. And we've actually taken efforts to update and improve our 218 training. Andy, you'll be glad to hear that those training efforts and updates will be completed by the end of September. So the folks have definitely rolled up their sleeves and are hard at work making those changes. So again, I want to thank you for your service and help in improving our service level to America's taxpayers. I think that's why we're here. I'm not only from a compliance standpoint, as the commissioner indicated, but finding ways to improve service, to improve education and outreach to our taxpayers so that they can comply with their tax responsibilities. And with this report, I think you give us valuable insight that helps us move in the right direction. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Christy?
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, everyone on the ITG team, Marcy, Tino, and Stephanie for the work on this report. I was particularly happy that you chose to do a survey because, as we've mentioned, that's something that we can't easily do. And we really do want to hear from the tribes, and sometimes for them to reach out to us is a bit of a fearful experience, and so it's really helpful when we can use you as our ACT committee to bridge that gap between the public and our function. Communications in the survey, I think we internally have perceived that there have been some issues since we have had to curtail some of our face-to-face efforts due to our agency's budget concerns. And you've confirmed some of that, and I think we've got some work to do on making sure people understand what's available to them, but also making sure we understand what they can effectively access, because that is a huge problem for Indian country. We need to work together to find effective ways to engage in communicating through the new technology that we have, and also within the current budget situation that we have as the federal government, but also that the tribal governments have. There's far less face-to-face interaction now than there used to be a few years ago. On some of the specific recommendations, we are committed to continuing to particularly do large organizations such as NAFOA, which you specifically cite, in a face-to-face interactive way. We have made that a priority over the last year, and I believe I'm meeting with their leadership next week. So we continue to try to keep that communication channel open because it is so focused on the finance aspect of things, as well as work with NCAI on policy issues. You mentioned a couple of the policy issues in the report. As Marcy went over in his report out, the ACA issues are very key right now to Indian country, and we have been trying to work with Treasury to get your voice heard, but as you know, it's not our jurisdiction to make the determination about whether what the statute does and doesn't do. So I know you are working with Treasury on that, and as are the organizations that you mentioned, and we'll continue to help facilitate those communications. When it comes to general welfare exclusion, we too are waiting for the Treasury Advisory Committee to truly be up and running so that we can get out some guidance on what, how to implement the Act. And we really do need to obviously hear from you, and there will be lots of consultation about those matters. There is no guidance yet, but there is a project open. We will need to do some regulations, and there will obviously be a lot of consultation and interaction with the tribes, but I hope also that we'll be able to count on the Act going forward to help us facilitate those communications. So again, I just want to thank the three of you from this year. Thanks Stephanie, who's rolling off. And I look forward to where the journey takes us next year. Thanks again.
Thanks, Christy. Hey, Rebecca?
Maybe on mute.
Rebecca, are you on mute? Well, maybe we can come back to Rebecca.
Well, since Rebecca's not here, I think the report that he provided was very helpful, and I really appreciate the fact that you stepped out and helped us to look at how we can do tax administration that works for the issuers as well as the IRS. We said it over and over again, we just have limited resources. We really need to focus on there's a spectrum, like the commissioner said, and you focused on that. We need to focus on outreach, which is more specific to the needs of the issuer community. They're not the same. And as you know full well, some issuers are very well represented, and they're large issuers. They provide a lot of, they are in the market a lot. And then there are some that are seldom in the market or very not enough. So we need to focus on who needs what kind of outreach. And then we also need to focus on enforcement resources in the right places and look to see where there is footfalls versus, egregious non-compliance. And we are working at that. Nan, Rebecca, and I, and Maria, who's been acting, I've been really working on that. So thank you very much for your report. And I look forward to everybody working together next year for another report. And those who are, and I can just segue into the next part, huh?
Which is opening it to the public.
Oh, no, I won't segue into the next part. Then I go to the next part. Ah, okay.
Any members of the public who have questions or comments for the ACT members on the reports, anything? Yes?
Do I need to go up to the front?
No, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm coming. Is there any policy about EO user fee in order to get a grant? Well, I mean, is there policy for EO organizations to increase status in order to get the recognition from a grant maker? Someone said that I have to pay higher user fee in order to receive a grant from the foundation. Is there any recommendation on that? If you get what I mean? Something about user fee for EO organizations.
Yeah, I mean, you all had a recommendation on the determination letter itself as a vehicle to increase education and improve education and resources, for those organizations that are getting and obtaining their exempt status newly. I think what the gentleman is referring to is when an organization has to prove their exempt status to a grant maker in order to receive that grant, is there, they obviously have to pay a user fee to get that determination letter. So, I mean, we biennially we look at the user fee structure with respect to the appropriate, cost, the cost of actually providing that service, and in this case it would be issuing a determination letter. So, I mean, it does cost to get a determination letter, and by and large, if if you're a 501c3 organization that is wanting to fundraise for grants from private foundations or otherwise, you do generally need that determination letter.
But you just reduced the easy user fee. I think it's effective July 1st.
Mm-hmm. That is correct.
It went from 400 to 275.
275, correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it actually went down.
Yay.
For the small ones.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's right, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
I hope that answered the question.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the public?
Mark, I have a comment.
Mark?
Yeah, I just wanted to throw out a subject matter that maybe the ACT committee might want to think about for next year, because I know the report is going to be across all of the various functions. And a lot of the reports today talked about more communications between the Internal Revenue Service and the stakeholders. And times have changed a little bit in that I now represent whistleblowers, and there's another stakeholder in a lot of these issues, and that's the whistleblower. And again, as has been pointed out, there's limited resources in these operation divisions. To the extent that the whistleblower can identify particular targets, those, for the application of the resources, that's less money and less examination of compliant taxpayers. And so I would ask, and I've been struggling to have more of an open communication. There's an opportunity through disclosure agreements to have open communication with whistleblowers in the council. This has been a struggle for the whistleblower community, not just in TEGE, but throughout the Internal Revenue Service. And it's something that I'm hoping that over the next, annual period, that we'll see a loosening of. It's something that maybe the ACT committee would not want to tackle. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the public? Once, twice? Okay. Well, now we have
Now
our...
Sunita can say.
All right, yeah, I get to do the fun part.
We want to recognize the 6 ACT members who are rolling off today. I want to personally thank them for their generous contributions with their time and expertise throughout the 3 years. And Sunita will present the awards as we show them on the screen. Members who aren't present will receive their awards by the U.S. mail.
No virtual here, except what's on there. So the first one is David Augustine. So I thank you, David, for your work on the Act for 3 years. We appreciate it very much. The next one is Allison Cohen, and she gets the same thank you certificate, but we have a very special letter in there for thanking you for being the chair. You've been a really good chair, and it's a lot of work. And I know you have a full-time job and family and other interests, and so yeah, pets and plants to water and all that kind of stuff. So thank you very much for doing it.
Thank you. Good luck, Matt.
And the next is Stephanie Dalrymple. And Stephanie, you're on the phone, I hope, and thank you very much for your dedication and helping us for the last 3 years. Virginia, hey, you're here. So this is for you. And thank you for all the work in 3 years. And I know, like Tammy said, it was an interesting time, especially for EO, because Tammy was new and we had lots of new leadership, so the support was very helpful.
I'm going to miss everybody.
Next is David Moha. I hope I said it right. And David, thank you very much. It was a pleasure getting to know you, and thank you for all the work you did on the EO subcommittee. And finally, I have Stuart sitting right next to me. And Stuart and I was just talking, thank you very much. Stuart is on the EP subcommittee, and Stuart said that he enjoyed the 3 years. It was as if coming back to the government. Because that's the best, that's the best job you can have. And I agreed with him. So thank you very much for the 3 years. So so those of you who are no longer going to be in ACT doesn't mean we won't be in touch, because your opinion is still very valuable to us. So keep in touch, and on various panels and seminars we see you on. And those of you who are staying on, thank you very much. I really look forward to working with you on the various joint projects that we're going to do, and some separate and some joint. It's not mandate that we do it, just have a joint cross-function project all the time. But we really look forward to that. It's going to make us really think about how we can, do cross-functional projects. So.
Rebecca is back. She
Oh,
can speak
wonderful.
now. Rebecca, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, well, we'll try it again. Thank you. Yes, I do want to say the TEB report provides several helpful recommendations, including how to streamline the examination process and the need to maintain our outreach efforts. But in addition, the report reflects our collaborative efforts throughout the year. Bill, David, and Floyd have been terrific advisors and sounding boards for TEB, allowing us to better understand the market and helping us to better direct our resources. Consistent with the report, we've reached out with publications to the ACT to make sure that we're providing appropriate information to our targeted audience. And we've tested new processes with the ACT to determine the impact on the industry of those processes. The report also reflects the interactive work we've done this year on TEB forums to improve the quality of the information provided on this forum. This partnership has been very effective and very appreciated. Thank you, Bill, David, and Floyd, for our partnership, and the entire ACT for all of your hard work.
Thank you, Rebecca. This completes our meeting. As designated federal officer, I officially adjourn this public meeting of the IRS Advisory Committee for Tax Exempt and government entities. Thank you, everyone.
See you around. Keep speaking as much as possible. I think that's what people need. Oh, you're doing fine. All people want to know is that you guys are listening. Thank you, Johnson. It's a